background there.
Yep.
Okay. Well, good morning, John, and thank you for joining us today. Would you mind introducing yourself and maybe giving us a quick summary of the mission of DOL Vets in case our listeners aren't familiar?
Sure. So John Lowry, and I am the Assistant Secretary of the Veterans Employment and Training Service within the Department of Labor. And we have a sort of a portfolio of missions, and they're all in support of transitioning service members, military spouses, and of course, veterans. And the first part of the portfolio is to help prepare those people that are coming off of active duty for meaningful careers. We also help protect their employment rights, and particularly the guardsmen and the reservists who may be called upon to serve their country, and make sure that when they come back from their service that they have the rights that they have earned. And so it's about informing the employers of their obligations. We provide employment services, not just to the transitioning service members, but to veterans of all ages. And finally, we promote the value of veterans to employers at large, be they the private sector, public sector, and help connect veterans and employers so that they can get that pipeline of great talent into the workforce.
Thank you. You served in the Marine Corps for 15 years and in the Marine Corps Reserve for 10. How did your military training and experience prepare you for this position?
I think the biggest preparation that it gave me is that I understand my customer, because I am a veteran. I was someone who had gone through a transition. I also was someone who had, as a civilian reservist, been deployed and had to leave my employer, and then came back when I was redeployed. So I have a pretty good sense of some of the challenges that our veterans face, but more importantly, in my mind, I have a pretty good sense of what the capabilities that this population brings to the workforce. And so I think I'm in a pretty good position because of my experience to really advocate for veterans in the workplace.
You also held leadership roles in manufacturing plants in Pennsylvania, Missouri, Wisconsin, and Indiana. How did this leadership experience in the corporate world prepare you for your mission at DOL Vets?
Yeah, I think the private sector experience has been very valuable to me, and in particular, having spent so much time in manufacturing, where I'm certainly very familiar with apprenticeship models through skilled trades. I used to run a number of different apprenticeships, and increasingly we're finding credentialing more and more important in the workplace, and we are piloting apprenticeship programs to help vector transitioning service member into apprenticeships, and just having some insights on the value of an apprenticeship. And of course, the value it brings to the transitioning service member. If you're coming off of active duty with a high school degree, maybe no college at all, but get vectored into an apprenticeship program, you can be looking at, on average, a $70,000 a year salary through an apprenticeship, which is a pretty good deal considering you're not going to be loaded up with college debt and some of the other challenges if you go another route. So having a sense of what the apprenticeship model is and what it offers employers and employees alike, I think has been valuable to me.
Mm-hmm. You were nominated in April 2018, but you weren't confirmed by the Senate until January 2020. So you had some time to think about your plans for DOL Vets. How did you use this time to your advantage in preparing for your new position?
Well, I did as much reading as I could, and obviously I wanted to respect the fact that I wasn't in the job yet, so I didn't want to get too engaged and too presume too much before I was actually confirmed. But as soon as I was confirmed, I really got into the details of what the work of the agency is. And my first couple of months on the job, fortunately, preceded the COVID crisis, so I could get out and about quite a bit. And so those early months were really about understanding current state, if you will, to borrow a manufacturing term. And then once you understand the current state, then you can sort of map to a future state and then figure out a plan to get from there to where you're going. And so it was really about I wanted to make sure that early in my career, we made some informed choices about a vision for the organization, and that we set priorities for the organization. Because absent a vision or priorities, it's really hard, I think, for the agency to figure out, what's the most important thing to do, and where can you assume a little bit of risk. So I saw that as a key part of what my responsibilities were, and so I took that time in waiting, and then particularly after I was confirmed, those first couple of months, to bring those elements into focus for the agency.
When you took over in January, the veteran unemployment rate was rather low, it was about 3.5%. So what was your top priority or top priorities coming in as the new leader of DOL Vets?
Yeah, it was, I didn't have day one my top priority, because I wanted to learn a little bit more, making sure I was making informed decisions. But it became apparent to me that even though we enjoyed record low unemployment, or at least since 2000 for veterans, we still had a number of veterans that weren't really achieving their full potential in the workplace, or that number may have masked people that were underemployed, right? Or maybe having a couple of jobs to make ends meet. And to me, that was a suboptimal outcome. So knowing how valuable veterans are to organizations, and knowing how when you load up a veteran with a lot of responsibility, they will rise to the occasion just about every time, that the vision started to come into focus, where we want to make sure that all veterans are living up to their full potential in the workforce. Okay, it's not just about finding a job. It's just not about the employment rate. It's about getting the most out of the veteran. And of course, when you do that, they're going to be in a better position, because they're going to probably getting paid more because they have more responsibility, and they're in a better economic situation to provide for their family, and also they're in a better mental state, right? Because when you're contributing, and you're making a difference and having an impact because you're loaded up, you tend to have a lot of sort of well-being that comes along with that. So that's not only good for the veterans, it's good for the organizations they serve, right? Because they're going to get the most out of that veteran. And ultimately, when you aggregate that across the country, that's good for our prosperity, and it's good for our economy. So that really became the vision. Now, from there, that vision really informed the two priorities for the agency. The first being we got to get the transition right for our veterans, and the transition, when someone's coming off of active duty, that's the first time our agency is really touching those soon-to-be veterans. So let's get that right, because if we can crank an extra degree or two of slope on someone's career trajectory the minute they hang up the uniform, the compounding benefits of that over time are significant, right? And conversely, if we don't get that right, and someone flounders around for their first couple of years or whatever out of uniform, there's compounding negative impact to that. So priority one is we're going to get the transition right for the veterans. And then priority two was looking at this. We're not the only agency in this space. There are all kinds of public and private and GI jobs. You guys are doing great work to help the veterans and help align them with great opportunities. So the second priority is really informed by that knowledge that there's a lot of people in this space. Now we have an advantage inside the Department of Labor that we are the focal point for veteran employment within the U.S. government. So let's use the clout, if you will, that comes with that, and then let's be really careful and selective and deliberate about who we're partnering with. So strategic partnerships, getting the right strategic partnerships is priority number 2. And what that looks like to me is that, we have a portfolio. On the day I walked in here, there was already a portfolio of partnerships. Let's look at that portfolio, right? Let's make sure that those individual partnerships that we're having are yielding the right return for the veteran, our customer, right? And if they are, great, let's double down. If they're not, maybe we walk away from the ones that aren't yielding a great return and look elsewhere, right, where there are other partners where we ought to be partnered with, our potential partners we ought to be partnered with to provide that great return for the veteran. So those are really the 2 priorities. Let's get the transition right, and let's work through strategic partnerships to kind of leverage our capabilities.
And then COVID-19 happened.
Yes.
How did that change your priorities? How did that change your strategy?
Yeah, great question. Well, the first thing we did is we sort of gathered the team together here and asked ourselves that question, right? Is that vision of helping, people reach their full potential in the workforce? Is the priorities of getting the transition right and doing through strategic partnerships, are they still relevant in a COVID-19 world? And what we determined after we provided some analysis on that is, yes, not only are they relevant, they're probably more relevant than ever because, take the transition, for instance, this is arguably the hardest circumstances one could transition into since probably the 1930s. So this isn't a time to provide, less transition assistance. It's arguably a time to provide more and better transition assistance. So the priorities, the vision remained the same, but then we got this sort of extra set of implied tasks that we hadn't been planning on before COVID-19, and that is, how do we deliver on our programs in a world where everything's done remotely? So we had to build from near scratch virtual capabilities, to reach those transitioning service members, to our HVRP, our Homeless Veterans Reintegration Program, which provides employment services to people on a homeless path. We had to figure out how do we do that virtually, and basically our whole portfolio of offerings, we had to figure out how to do it online. I would say the good news is that we were able to transition much quicker than we thought we were. To date, we've given more than 400 virtual transition assistance workshops to transitioning service members all over the world. And we have a fairly robust virtual capability right now. But I would say this is not optimal, right? We're gonna try to improve within this context, but there are a lot of things that there's really no substitution for, face-to-face interaction, and our work is kind of high touch. So while we've developed this virtual capability, I think we still have room to improve upon its efficacy.
Well, there's now a tremendous number of veterans out of work as a result of the pandemic. What is DOL Vets doing to help veterans who lost their jobs as a result of the pandemic?
Right. So we're very much open for business. So the one thing that we're proud of in the agency is that I kind of laid out the 4 Ps of our mission: the preparing the service members for their transition, the providing employment services, protecting the rights, and promoting their value into the workforce. We're continuing to execute on that mission, and we're also we estimate right now, there's probably more than 1 million recently unemployed veterans out there. So what we are doing is we are looking to increase our capacity across our entire portfolio offerings so that we are ready to assist those that aren't going to go back to work. Now, the good news is we're seeing a divergence between the veteran unemployment numbers and the non-veteran unemployment numbers, whereby veterans are actually have less unemployment than the non-veterans, and that divergence is fairly pronounced. It's in the last unemployment report that came out is 2.3% better, which tells us that employers recognize the value of the veterans. You know, they are less inclined to let a veteran go because of the value that they bring. So our belief is that a lot of these million or so unemployed veterans are temporarily laid off, sort of furloughed position, but we also know some of them aren't going to have a job to come back to because their businesses won't survive. Though that's that increased capacity that we're planning for, and again, very much open for business, and we're going to stay open for business.
The Guard and Reserve have been called upon extensively during the pandemic and the recent protests. Have you seen an uptick in USERRA complaints as a result?
Not yet, but the good news for us is that we're ready for that. You can see as mobilizations occur, it correlates fairly closely, the number of mobilizations to the number of USERRA claims that you have downstream. So the good news is that we have more capacity than we did at the height of the activations during Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom. So we don't anticipate, our modeling doesn't anticipate that we would have more claims than at the height of those conflicts. And we have more capacity in terms of actual people that can do these investigations. And we've just introduced a new platform, a virtual case management platform that's going to help us be even more efficient than we were in the past. So we feel like we're in a very good position with respect to USERRA. And the other thing that we were doing as soon as the COVID thing started happening and we saw these mobilizations for Guard and Reserve, is we proactively pushed to employers, both public and private, sort of frequently asked questions, FAQ sheets about what the rights and responsibilities are for USERRA, because our experience has taught us that the vast majority of employers do not want to penalize their reservists for their service. When they run afoul of it, it's often because they don't understand what their obligations are. So we've been sort of marketing, if you will, broadly and broadcasting that so that the employers understand what they're, what they need to do, and that we think is going to prevent some claims from happening because there won't be the violation.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that the obviously the transition GPS classes that the employment workshops had to go online. Is that still the case? Have they resumed in-person training, or is that still virtual?
Yeah, so it depends, obviously, because these installations are all over the world and everyone's sort of in a different spot with respect to the virus. So some have come back, all brick and mortars. Others are sort of hybrid situations. I audited a class that was given in Fort Riley, Kansas a couple of weeks ago, where there was an actual classroom, actually two classrooms, because they were trying to do social distancing. So there was the instructor in the one classroom, and then there was like this classroom next door where they were piping it in over a video. And then I was in my place in Arlington, Virginia, online doing it. So you see sort of these hybrid solutions. I think one positive thing from all this is that we realized having a good, robust virtual capability to deliver this curriculum is something we want to continue to maintain, because there are service members that are out in the hinterlands that may not have the access to a classroom somewhere post COVID-19, and that we could reach them where they are with their technology is a great capability to have. So I think the learnings from this will be able to apply in a post-COVID-19 world.
That makes sense. You recently wrote a blog about the Vets Apprenticeship Pilot Program, and you mentioned earlier that you're a fan of apprenticeship programs because of your background in manufacturing. How have the apprenticeship programs been affected by the pandemic since a lot of them are very much hands-on training programs?
Right. So just apprenticeship programs, like everywhere else, has been impacted by the training or by the COVID-19 situation, and also companies who may have welcomed to bring on board a bunch of apprenticeships. A lot of them have sort of tapped on the brakes a little bit. So right now the challenge is making sure that we have a robust enough portfolio of apprenticeship opportunities. So the sort of the supply side, if you will, is where we're putting our effort. But social distancing and doing things safely, when you have a kind of hands-on, literally a hands-on kind of in-person sort of curriculum, can be a challenging thing, and we've seen a little bit of a drawback from where we were pre-COVID-19. Now that said, there's still plenty of apprenticeship opportunities, and it's the bigger challenge, I think, is to reach all those transitioning service members and help them visualize, help them understand what an apprenticeship might do for them. And I talked about the manufacturing apprenticeships because that's what I'm most familiar with. But there's hundreds and hundreds of different types of apprenticeships that can vector a transitioning service member onto a lot of different paths. And we want to make sure that we're reaching those service members that just to let them know what the benefits are, and then kind of match the supply and demand. But it's more challenged certainly in the COVID-19 world, and we are 6 months into our pilot of our apprenticeship. We have these what we call APCs, apprenticeship. What's it stand for?
Placement counselors.
Apprenticeship placement counselors at 8 installations that started in January. So in the Army, it's Bragg and Bliss, and it's Nellis and Travis in the Air Force. It's Norfolk and San Diego for the Navy, and the Marine Corps is Cherry Point in Miramar. And we had hoped by now that we would have hundreds of placed apprenticeships, but because of the COVID-19 challenge, we've reached hundreds of service members and told them about this opportunity, but we haven't had the hundreds of placements yet. We've had some placements, but we're facing a little bit of a headwind. But I, for one, want this pilot to be successful because I think the potential for it is just tremendous.
Well, transitioning from the military has never been easy. It's harder than ever now in a very unstable job market. What advice or reassurance would you give to service members who are preparing for their transition in the coming months?
Yeah, I think that you have to start early before you even get into a TAP transition assistance program. Before you even begin that curriculum, there's some things that you can do to sort of ready yourself psychologically, if you will. I think a lot of veterans or soon-to-be veterans fall into this trap of limiting themselves to what they think they can do. And I would tell people to start with think about what you want to do, right? Do some soul searching about what you loved about the military, and conversely what you hated about the military. Think about where you get your energy. When are you at your best, right? What are the kind of the values that drive you? And when you do that sort of soul searching, then you can begin to think about what that dream job might be. And I would tell people, people that do things that they're excited about tend to do better, right? They're going to come closer to fulfilling that potential, which is our vision, right? So I want people to think big about what they want to do. And then it's a matter of, as you sort of bring that into focus, then it's a matter of sort of doing an inventory of your skills and what hard and soft skills, and then figure out where the gaps might be to position yourself for that opportunity. The great news for veterans are that the soft skills that they bring to the workforce, are incredible. It's leadership, it's adaptability, it's ability to work in diverse teams, it's ability to deal with ambiguity, all the things that employers love to have and that can travel across any industry. Some of them will have the exact hard skills that they need, others won't, but that's where, you know, credentialing opportunities and educational opportunities that we can help provide through transition assistance will help. So long answer to your short question, but I think it all begins with don't limit yourself to what you think you can do. Start with what you want to do, and start with looking inside, because if you do that thing you're going to be passionate about, you're going to do it better, and you're going to get closer to reaching your full potential.
Well, I see we've just about used up our time, and I want to respect your time. But is there anything else that you would like to add?
Anything else would I like to add?
Hire Vets Medallion Program.
Hire Vets Medallion Program.
Tell us about Hire Vets Medallion Program.
So we are in our, I guess we just wrapped up our third year.
Yes, sir.
Third year of the Hire Vets Medallion Program, and this is a not a credential, it's the credential that the United States government awards to organizations that do a particularly good job at attracting and hiring and retaining and supporting veterans, so that the veterans can thrive in the workplace. And and we manage this program within the Department of Labor. And the benefit of the Hire Vets Medallion Program for the employers is the recognition that they get. We will have an award ceremony here at the Department of Labor, but it's also something that they can use the brand and associate their company with that brand, and that becomes a magnet, if you will, for veterans, because on the supply side of the equation, we're teaching not just the transitioning service members, but all veterans, anyone who visits our website. We have an interactive map that will show people where to go to find these companies that in which, you know, veterans thrive. So if you wanted to, you know, you're getting out of the service, you want to move back to Fort Wayne, Indiana, or wherever you happen to go, you just click on Indiana and drill into Fort Wayne, and then you'll see who those Hire Vet Medallion Program recipients are. We had a record number of applicants this year. We're reviewing to make sure that they all meet the criteria. It was 684, I believe. We expect, as the Hire Vets Medallion brand gets more recognized, and people see the employers in particular see the benefit of it, that number is probably going to double or triple over the next couple of years. But to the extent that you can help us get the word out on it, we'd be grateful, because again, this is something we see of great benefit for employers and veterans alike.
Absolutely. Well, John, thank you so much for giving us your time today and your insight. We very much appreciate it.
Yeah, likewise, and thank you for doing what you're doing. You're great to partner with you, and you're a great resource for our veterans and for the employers too.
Well, thank you. Well, enjoy the rest of your day.
Yes, likewise. Thanks.
Take care.